Hey, you're tuned in to Live at 5. And before we jump into today's guest, I just want to remind you that this show is only possible because of the generosity and support of amazing people like you. Continue to support us by subscribing to this YouTube channel, clicking the link to donations and merchandise in the bio below, and by spreading the word about our shows. Thanks again, and enjoy. And we're live at 5 on this beautiful Sunday. And I'm really excited about today's show, actually, because we're going to be welcoming one of my favorite saxophone players in the world. And he's going to be joining us all the way from New York City, which is super cool. But before we do that, I want to introduce our producer, Darcy O'Connor, who's joining us all the way from Clapton, London. How are you, Darcy?
I'm doing well, Giacomo. How are you, mate?
I'm good.
It's nice to have someone else on the show again today, so we don't get sick of each other.
I wasn't getting sick of you.
Oh.
Well, it's good today. It was an interesting day with all that's going on. I thought I'd lost my marbles, but then I found them under the bed, which is great. It's just such a stressful time. Sometimes you feel like you're losing your marbles. Sorry.
Well, let's listen to this music so I can call the police and we can send you straight to jail.
For bad jokes?
For bad jokes. The jail for bad jokes.
Thanks, man. Let me just introduce this one quickly. So Eddie and I have been friends for about, it's got to be 6 years, maybe 7 years. And I knew about him first because I knew his old band leader, is a guy called Jon Batiste, who's currently the band leader of the Colbert Show's house band. But back in the day, John was at the same Summer Jazz Institute as me. So I met him, and, I was following his career as he was kind of coming to fame. And I loved Eddie's playing from the very first time I saw that band. And then we met and we had a jam session actually at Ronnie Scott's one summer, and we hit it off, and we realized that we were really into the same things. And every time I'd go to New York, I'd call him up, and every time he'd come to London, he'd call me and we'd hang out. And this first song is a song that we played together on a park bench in Central Park. Must have been 6 years ago. I was going through New York to visit my mom, and Eddie came and met me in Central Park, and another friend of mine was in New York, and he filmed us just practicing on this park bench, and it was just such a great experience. And I was able to find this little clip. I don't think Eddie's seen this, so I hope he's joining us soon to watch. But this is Tico Tico with me and Eddie Barbash. So that was Tico Tico, featuring Dave Archer on the guitar the second time around, and Eddie Barbash on the saxophone. Eddie is currently trying to join our Zoom room, and momentarily going to succeed. It's just connecting to audio. But I'll just remind you while he's doing that you're listening to Live at 5. And I hope that you've been enjoying the daily webcasts that we've been doing. We've certainly enjoyed putting them together for you. And if you want to tell friends about that and about the webcast, we'd really appreciate it. You can just send them the link that's in our bio, and they'll be able to click on that live every day. Dars, how are we doing on Eddie's audio?
We're currently conversing behind the scenes to get him online.
Let's play some more music. Let's play. We have a video that Eddie sent us earlier today. That was something that I haven't seen in 3 or 4 years. I don't know if I ever saw it. And it was a party that we played at in Connecticut. I can't remember what the town was called, but it's a commuter town to New York City. And I drove down there from Saratoga, and we did a gig with an amazing violin player called Alex Hargraves. And it was a weird one because it was. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk about it more when Eddie joins. But it's three kind of treble high register instruments playing together. So you have violin, alto sax, and clarinet, which usually would never be a band. But we put together a bunch of arrangements, and we did a concert all together, and it kind of presented itself as kind of an amazing lineup, even though it wasn't something that you'd think would work. And this is our arrangement of Mr. Jelly Lord by Jelly Roll Morton. And let us know what you think in the comments. This is Eddie Barbash live from Brooklyn, New York. He's risen up to
Hey,
to make us some iced coffee. We had we had Alex Bolton on the show making us a cocktail, and now we have Eddie sipping a cold brew.
Oh,
Is
that
it
looks
hot in New York?
delicious.
I wouldn't say hot. It's in the low 50s on a good day right now. Mid 50s on a good day.
All right. Okay. Not too hot.
Not too hot, but I've been able to practice on the deck a little bit.
That's great. Eddie has a roof terrace that looks over the Manhattan skyline, and he serenades Manhattan every night with his alto saxophone. And one of these days,
I torture Manhattan with my practicing all day.
So it's great to see you. It's been about a year and a bit, I think, since you came over.
Yeah.
Although it feels a
That's
lot
the last
longer.
time I saw you?
Yeah, I
I
think
guess
so.
I saw SG more recently.
Yeah, she came over and stayed. Now we have a yellow room as well in
Nice.
our house, so we can
Yeah?
just I'll take a photo afterwards.
Are
But
you
I
in
want
the same place that you were a year ago?
No, we moved. We moved to South London. We moved to
Oh,
Deptford. Yeah,
cool.
really nice. It's really nice. Eddie was supposed to come back for our May birthday month because Smitty's is turning 5 this year. But with everything that's going on, we've decided to create a digital meeting from my yellow room to yours. So tell us about that trio that we just heard, or tell people about it.
That was with the two of us with a great fiddle player named Alex Hargraves, who I met here in Brooklyn, sort of in the bluegrass and progressive acoustic music scene. He's one of my favorite musicians in the world. I play in another band with him, led by an accordionist named Sam Ryder. Um, yeah, I don't know. Trio is sort of like a dream to put together because Giacomo and Alex are two of my favorite people to play with that don't play rhythm section instruments, melodic instruments, and to improvise with. So it's a weird instrumentation. It's like half a band.
Yeah, it's the,
So it was a challenge figuring out how to play together, but it was really fun because we're the kind of people that play with the same time feel and can improvise in harmony with each other and things like that because we sort of just hear the same stuff.
yeah, that concert was super fun to put together because it was fairly low pressure in the sense that it was just a house concert
Right.
for some family friends, but at the same time, I mean, we probably practiced for 2 days to get all that music together, didn't we?
Hmm.
So you guys came up to Saratoga and then we drove down to Connecticut, and it's exactly what you said. It wasn't a lineup that was supposed to work,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, just because everybody's time was in the same place, it kind of all kind of moved along. Are there? Yeah. Well, we
I
should we
think
should do
I,
it again.
I think actually what happened is we spent 2 days just coming up with that arrangement that you just played, and then just improvised everything else on the show.
That's probably true. That's probably true. It takes time. It takes time.
So
So we're all
where did
obsessed.
you two meet, and how did you first start playing together?
We met at a festival in France, in Samois, a sort of gypsy jazz Django festival. I was there playing with Jon Batiste, and I guess Giacomo already knew John. And I think the first time we really hung out was we were jamming like in the campsite or something.
Dinah.
And I was drunk and I sang Dinah.
He sang Dinah, and he
Oh my
sang it
god!
great, and he played it even better. It was
Well, it was one
great.
of my grandfather's favorite songs.
Right.
Used to hearing him sing it. Um, yeah. And then after that, part of that same tour, I think maybe like a week or two later, we ended up in London. And so we met up with you again at London. And then that was the second time we played together. which I remember more because maybe I was a
Less
little less
inebriated.
inebriated. But it was upstairs at Ronnie Scott's, and there were
Yeah.
people dancing and like rolling on the floor, and we were taking a solo on something together.
Yeah. I just remember, yeah, I remember that's exactly what I remember. And I remember at that upstairs at Ronnie's thing that we were just trading, and it kind of sounded like it kind of sounded like the same person playing back
Yeah,
at each other. It was the first
yeah.
time, it was we have a kind of a weird thing, especially when I'm playing clarinet and Eddie's playing alto, that when we play together, sometimes we can't tell if it's kind of like you're holding your instrument and you don't realize that you're not playing until you realize that you're not blowing, because what he's playing is what you would have played.
It's especially weird on those recordings that we did last year where the blend on some of them is like it's hard to tell who's who.
Well, I
We're
have
playing
those.
in unison.
I
Oh,
have
great.
those to play. So since we've just talked about it, let's listen to let's listen let's listen to Beijinhos. Yeah, this one. I just remember the lock of you. When you play with another horn player, and this is true when we do the house band as well. It's very rare that you notice when you usually notice the notes that are together more than the ones that aren't, because you think, wow, that was really great that we got those together. But when I play with Eddie, I notice the ones that aren't together because 95% of the notes are like just so locked.
You
And this
know,
big, yeah,
it's funny that you were saying earlier, especially when you're playing clarinet. I think it's funny. I never thought about this, but I think we sound more similar when you're playing clarinet and I'm playing alto than when we're both playing alto.
yeah, it's so funny. Yeah. So, well, see what you all think about this. This is Beijinhos, but a little trio arrangement with me and Eddie and Dave Archer on guitar.
One, two, one, two, three.
and that's Eddie Barbash, Dave Archer, and myself on Beijinhos, which means little kisses. Eddie and I were just talking about double tonguing, which is what were you saying? You're saying you're practicing during this. Eddie is like in, if we're talking about, coronavirus central, and he's right in the midst of it, but he's very optimistic as he always is, and I really appreciate that. And he said that he's got a practice schedule from 11 to 4 every day, which reminds me of Earl Bostick. Earl Bostick used to say he would practice from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. because it was his job. So
Exactly.
he would go to work every day. So what are you practicing?
That's definitely how I'm approaching it, because I think I would lose my mind in this quarantine if I wasn't doing something. I've got so my schedule is I try to do so I make a schedule, but I never stick to it because I'm too OCD and I get stuck on whatever I start with. But the goal is to every day review an old fiddle tune, um, to then practice double tonguing for an hour, because that's sort of my goal for the quarantine, is to make some significant progress on double tonguing. Um, Learn a new fiddle tune, and then learn a new jazz tune and try to apply some harmonic concept to it that I'm working on. And right now I'm working on these um, ideas that I've taken from some Paul Gonsalves lines. But the double tonguing, I was just telling Giacomo, maybe out of everything I've ever practiced in my life, has the lowest ratio of progress to hours spent. I think at this point I've spent, you know, I don't know, maybe 60 hours trying to learn how to double tongue, and still it's like real feeble.
Well, look, you got the time. Maybe we'll have to have another episode with Eddie where we check on his double tonguing.
I thought you said, at first I thought you said, look, you've got the tongue.
You've got the tongue, now use it. Darcy, you said we have some questions out there. So what are people saying?
Oh, I mean, we've got some questions, we've got some comments. Firstly, Pedro Segundo is in the chat and he's saying hi.
Hey, Ped.
Hey, Pedro.
He's virtually reminiscing with you too, especially about that Upstairs from Ronnie's show.
He was there. That's amazing. Yeah, that's so cool.
Which was really cool.
Ped, you're in New York too, aren't you? I think he's in New York.
Yeah, he said he's in New York, and
you're not allowed
sending
to
his love.
Good.
Catherine C's just piped in asking what is double tonguing, which is what I was also silently asking during that whole conversation.
So double tonguing is so it's articulation. So anytime you are playing a wind instrument, you you can either slur, which is going ah, or you can articulate the notes, and that's where you touch on a saxophone. You touch the reed with your tongue, and it goes ta 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 ta. So you can only do that so fast. You can only do that essentially as fast as you can go ta 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 ta.
Right.
But in order to get a faster articulation, there's a technique called double tonguing, where you first touch the reed with your tongue, then touch your tongue to the roof of your mouth, like the center of your tongue. So you go taka instead of tata. So when you're really good at it, you can play really fast, articulated staccato passages by going taka 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 taka. And that's double tonguing.
Wow, amazing. What's some examples of like that people might be able to check out that's, a good indication of what solid double tonguing technique sounds like?
It's a lot easier on brass instruments.
A lot easier on brass instruments. But okay, I got one. You got to look up, let me see. I got to make sure I'm spelling his name correctly because it's really weird.
I've got one while you're looking it up.
All right.
and mine is Alan Vizzuti playing the Carnival of Venice. Is it no, it's yeah, I think it's, yeah, Alan Vizzuti. Type in Alan Vizzuti, Vizzuti, and it's just like trumpet shred for 8 minutes, but it's really fun to watch. And the whole thing of the double tonguing idea is that it kind of gives you a lot of it sounds, it's very impressive. I mean, it's hard to do, but it also sounds yeah.
So now my ideal for double tonguing, and the way I would like to use it if I ever learn how to do it, which right now it seems like maybe I won't, is this guy, this vaudeville saxophonist from the teens and 20s named Rudy Wiedoff. And you spell that Rudy, Rudy, but then Wiedoff is spelled Wiedoeft. That's like, so it's Wiedoft, Wiedoeft. And my favorite song of his is called Valse Marilyn, Valse, and then Marilyn, Marilyn.
What Eddie hasn't mentioned is that he's not only practicing double tonguing, but he's practicing spelling as well. That's why he keeps spelling things over and over. So from 11 to 4, he does saxophone, and then from 4 to 8, he does spelling. And so anyway, yeah. If you want to see more of that, you can go to his Instagram, where you can watch him spell and play saxophone at Eddie Barbash.
Right.
Rudy,
we'll get both of those tunes into the description after the show. That sounds cool.
Great.
Should we listen to some more music?
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a song that was actually written by our guitarist Dave Archer, and I think I named it with his permission, and it's called Skylar Island, which is a little island in the Hudson River that you drive over from Saratoga, which is where I grew up, to go to Greenwich. Yes, we say Greenwich, not Greenwich in upstate New York. We're still not cultivated like that. And it's just a beautiful spot. And this song reminded me of that. So this is Skylar Island. and we're back live with Eddie Barbash, and that was Skylar Island by Dave Archer. And yeah, so Eddie's been on an amazing musical journey since he was born, and but most recently he's been kind of doing a totally new thing in the realm of woodwinds. I mean, from my perspective, which is that he's integrated himself. We were just kind of briefly speaking about Memphis and Nashville, and particularly Nashville, because Eddie spent a fair amount of time there studying bluegrass music and playing with bluegrass players. Now, if you know bluegrass, you know that the saxophone is not usually accepted into bluegrass music. But Eddie turned up on the scene and convinced everybody that alto is a bluegrass instrument. So how did that come about, Ed? And how did you get into that music? And why is that kind of why do you what I hear when you play, that style of music? I mean, you sound, you always sound like you on everything you play, but why does that style resonate with you so much?
I think first it was, well, the first time I played it, I learned a tune from a friend of mine who's a great bass player, and at the time he was learning how to play bluegrass guitar. And he taught me a fiddle tune, and I immediately fell in love with the different way of improvising. Because coming up as a jazz musician, we're drilled on harmony all the time, and it's all about like knowing the changes and blowing a solo over the changes. But learning a fiddle tune, I didn't even know what the harmony was when he taught it to me. It was all about the melody and then learning how to improvise off of the melody rather than the harmony. And so you can take these equally virtuosic and exciting, flights of improvisation, but they're rooted entirely in the melody of the song as opposed to the harmony of the song. And I just got so excited when I discovered that that was a way that you could improvise. So I just started learning as many fiddle tunes as I could and hanging out with all the people who played that music, and kind of just from there just kept going further and further down that path.
Yeah, that sounds like, that really sounds like the discussion we were having a couple days back, Darcy, about traditional jazz as well. How it's or whatever, that kind of pre-bebop era of jazz music, particularly the ragtime stuff, is really melody led.
Mhm.
And Eddie, I think that's something that we've always connected over as well. Is that kind of period of music, the everything from Jelly Roll up to John Kirby, because it has that same idea, don't you think?
Yeah. And I think so. And another element to it, and I don't, do you have that video queued up that I sent you of me with the fiddle player and the banjo player and stuff?
I can get it ready.
This would be a good intro to that. More recently, I've gotten really excited about um, this style of music that's sort of the predecessor to bluegrass, which is called old time. And that's music that was happening in the Appalachian Mountains, that is sort of the descendant of um, Irish and Scottish music from the British Isles. And it came, those folks came over and settled the Appalachian region and brought their tunes with them. And then those songs mixed with African stuff and African American music. And there was this whole string band tradition that we now call old time, where there's less improvising and it's more of it's of everybody playing this melody together. And they'll do really slight little variations or embellishments, but it's really all about how hard can we groove together and drive this melody forward. And I've fallen in love with that because as a saxophonist, particularly in a jazz context, you only ever get to play when you're playing the melody to the song or playing your solo. And the rest of the time, you're standing on the sidelines and you're kind of a spectator. And I was always jealous of the bass player, or the drummer, or the pianist that got to play all the time and was really like a part of the group. You know, as a soloist, you sometimes don't even feel like you're part of the group. You sort of just step in for your moment and then step out. But
Try to look cool standing on the side. That's a big. They should teach that in jazz schools. Do a whole semester how to stand around.
Because you spend more time standing around than you do playing. You're in a band with 3 other horn players.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's like,
But playing old time, you play all the time. So it's been so exciting getting into that music, because I discovered like, oh, I can be a part of the rhythm section, and I can just focus on like grooving with everybody, and it's this collective thing. It's not about any one person, and we're all just trying to groove together as hard as we can, and I get to have that role of being a rhythm section instrument essentially on the saxophone. So this video, I don't know if you've got it ready to go, is from a festival where I hired these high school kids that I had seen from a video that a friend of mine posted on Facebook of this band playing at the Galax Old Time Fiddlers convention. And I was so amazed by this banjo player and this fiddle player and mandolin player that I wanted to play with them. And I got in touch with them on Facebook. Actually, I had this gig at this festival, and nobody that I normally play with could make the gig. And so I got in touch with these high school kids on Facebook, and they were able to do it. And so they came up and we played a whole set of old time music for this concert. And it was so fun. And I should say, since then, the banjo player, well, I think they've all gone on to go to Berklee School of Music. And the banjo player recently won the Steve Martin Banjo Award or something, and just got this like $50,000 no strings attached award to just be
no
himself,
pun intended,
play music. Anyway, this tune in this video, we're playing a song written by somebody who was one of their teachers and another friend of mine, a guy named Nate Leith, and the song is called Spider Shoe.
And we're back live at 5 with Eddie Barbash. Before we go back to Eddie, I just want to remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. It helps us out a lot. And also click and share the link in the bio below to find out what you can do to support us and find out more about what we're doing. So, Eddie, we had a question in the chat about your experience playing with Stay Human and playing with Jon. And the question is, what did you learn from playing with Jon? And I'd imagine the answer is interesting. So we'll throw that question to you.
Well, I learned a lot. I had a lot to learn when I started playing with Jon because I met him when I was a freshman at Juilliard and I was only 18. I had really had very little experience at that point. So I think directly and indirectly learned a ton just by all the experience he gave me. I think one of the biggest things is that I had very little experience playing by ear and having to perform while being unprepared when I started playing with him. And Jon is a real improviser and kind of doesn't like to have things too prepared before playing. So I remember one time being very early on being on a gig with him and he was playing all songs that I'd never heard before or just even making stuff up on the spot and then just like pointed at me and said solo, and I had no idea what was going on or what the song was or anything, and it was a horrible terrifying experience. But that happened a lot throughout my years playing with him, having to do that, that it just thickened my skin and made it so it's not very often that I get nervous or uncomfortable no matter what the situation is, and also taught me all kinds of skills for dealing with those types of situations and inspired me to train my ear and become more comfortable playing when I'm unprepared and when I don't know what the song is, and like learning how to learn a song on the gig, that type of thing. And I think another thing with him is that the way he always rehearsed was he taught us everything by ear. So, and sometimes it would be right before the gig backstage, he would decide there was a song he wanted to play, or he would be writing a song and he would teach us this long, elaborate melody or horn part that we had to learn by ear and memorize really quickly and then immediately perform it. And I think that just trained my ear and my memory and got me better at dealing with doing uncomfortable things under pressure.
It's funny that thing, doing it in concert, you can't really, because I know that feeling as well. And what you said about it, you get more accustomed to being uncomfortable essentially. And you start to be kind of cool-headed even when the situation doesn't allow it, because nobody wants to go on stage and sound like an idiot. But you usually think you do more than you do. It's usually in your head. But I think what you said, that he would kind of that he would just point to you and say solo. The only way to get better at that is to do it on gigs. You can't actually do that in the practice room. And I wish you could, because it's such a terrifying feeling for kind of years, that you have that feeling. And then after a while, I think one day for me it just kind of evaporated, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do this because I've done it before and it always goes okay. And
there were, though, it's not that you can't prepare for those situations at all, because they definitely, having that experience also inspired a lot of practice ideas that I worked on at home. For example, like I remember I spent one summer, it was like my project to learn how to hear the chords to a song as quickly as possible on the bandstand. So I replicated that by I would take records and play them and not allow myself to play my saxophone or pause the recording, but have to hear all the changes, all the chords. Because on the bandstand you can't be noodling to figure out the chords, and you can't like have the band stop for you to figure out the chord. So I sort of replicated that at home, and that made it a lot easier for me to be in those spontaneous situations. And then I think another thing I did was the same thing with melodies, like play a recording and try to grab as much of the melody as I could, just listening to it without letting it stop, you know?
Yeah.
Like those were exercises I made up to try to help deal with those situations.
You should be like a saxophone personal trainer. You're great at coming up with exercises. I think that's a real skill, actually. I'm joking about it, but seriously, I think for people who are musicians out there, sometimes it's hard to know what to practice. And if you can hone in on one area of weakness and find a creative way of making it into an exercise, for example, let's say I love Indian food, but I can't cook it at all. So maybe instead of buying, a 400-page Indian cookbook, maybe I would just make dal for a summer and just get it good. It's with practicing, you kind of, and I know this from you from years of kind of talking about it. And I think it's an amazing skill that you have, that exercise that you described about, hearing the chords to a record before the song is over. Is that what you said?
Yeah, basically I just let it play. Well, I mean, sometimes in the beginning I was so bad at it, I'd have to let the song play like 6 times on repeat before I could get it, you know?
Yeah.
But the point was just not allowing myself to pause it or to noodle around on my horn to figure it out.
I think that's awesome. That's really cool. Eddie Barbash, I think we're gonna leave it for today, and well, we're gonna have to do this again because
I'm lonely.
Well, let's make some more videos, and I think we're all in agreement that we need to get Eddie back on Live at 5. But Eddie, thank you so much for joining us, and
nice to be here.
And have a great practice session today. I hope the double tongue.
No, it's Sunday. I'm not practicing today.
Amazing. Great. And thanks, Darcy O'Connor, our producer in Clapton. And thanks to you for listening to Live at 5. We'll see you tomorrow with Adrian Cox. We have some cool stuff cooked up for that one as well. But in the meantime, be safe and be healthy and have a great Sunday evening. See you soon.
Thanks again for listening to Live at 5. Remember to subscribe to this channel and click on the link in the description to see where you can donate, sign up for a Smitty's membership, or buy our records and merch. See you tomorrow. Thanks again.